The United States Senate Foreign Relations Committee will come to order. This morning we have an interesting agenda, and before we do, we want to welcome all our guests, the public. We're glad to have you always. We do have a zero-tolerance policy for interruptions or attempt to communicate, but other than that, we're glad to have you here, and glad to have everybody's participation. I'm going to give an opening statement, yield to the ranking member who will do so, and then we'll hear from our witness. And after that, we will open it up to a round of questions. So, Mr. Undersecretary, thank you so much for being here today to discuss an incredibly important issue, and that's arms control. Timely issue given the President's actions in Iran to address a near-nuclear capable adversary, which one could argue is indeed arms control. The military action in the Middle East has highlighted what the United States must do to protect the American people from the imminent threat of an adversary and the danger of nuclear weapons in the wrong hands. As we all know, having nuclear weapons in the wrong hands is very, very dangerous for the entire planet. President Trump is rightly taking care of the Iranian nuclear capabilities, but as you know, Iran is not the only country of concern. We are now, for the first time, in a multipolar nuclear landscape. It is a landscape where the U.S. is facing two nuclear near-peer competitors in Russia and China, in addition to rogue states with nuclear ambitions, which are a very, very concerning problem. As you have rightly noted before, we are in an inflection point, and a changing landscape requires change in policy. The expiration of the New START treaty with Russia wasn't just a symbolic milestone. By the way, I supported that and urged the President to terminate. It was the recognition that we have more than one nuclear threat to the American people, and nuclear agreements of days gone by no longer meet the needs of our nation. If our adversaries are building nuclear stockpiles, we, unfortunately, must do so as well. I know you agree that any future agreement must be verifiable, enforceable, and inclusive of developing nuclear powers. A treaty with only Russia will not protect American interests. But building this kind of broad nuclear agreement won't be easy. Russia is a serial treaty violator, and that's putting it kindly. It has failed to uphold its end virtually every treaty that it has signed. And China, too, is violating its treaty obligations under the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty and has the fastest-growing nuclear arsenal of any nuclear-armed state. This is a dangerous time, but fortunately, we have an administration that's up to the task. President Trump has stated clearly that future arms control must address both Russian and Chinese nuclear arsenals. And Secretary Rubio has laid out three foundations for any new arms control agreements that I think are spot on and worth noting here, as most things Secretary Rubio does. First, arms control can no longer be a bilateral issue between the United States and Russia. It must include China to be even remotely effective. Second, we will not accept terms that harm the United States or ignore nations who do not follow through on agreements in pursuit of a future agreement. It is pointless. Listen up, Russia. And third, we will always negotiate from a position of strength. We are the United States of America, and we will act like it. We need a credible, modernized nuclear program that deters our enemies from ever trying to intimidate us with their own nuclear weapons. But we need to do this while pursuing all avenues to fulfill the President's genuine desire for a world with fewer of these awful weapons, as Secretary has noted. Early in this administration, President Trump directed a landmark transformation of the State Department to reduce bureaucracy and structural inefficiencies that got in the way of effective foreign policy. The organization you lead now is able to align arms control, security assistance, emerging threats, counterterrorism, and counter-narcotics policies all under one roof to support America's national interests. As the inaugural Undersecretary for Arms Control and International Security, I hope that you will use this opportunity to provide this committee with an update on the reorganization and the state of our nuclear programs and negotiations as much as can be done in an open setting. Thank you for your service and that of your family, and I'll now turn it over to the ranking member, Senator Shaheen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Secretary DiNanno. Now that I know about your history, I will consider you an honorary Granite Stater. So we're delighted to welcome you to the hearing today. Last Thursday, almost 3 weeks into this war against Iran, the administration pushed through more than $16 billion in arms sales to the Middle East. And they did that by using emergency authority to bypass normal congressional review. What we know is that our Gulf partners are burning through interceptors at a staggering rate, using in a day what the United States produces in a year. We met with a number of our Gulf partners last week and heard that they are concerned about the availability of munitions. This is an emergency with respect to our munitions and weapons, I believe. And I think it's one that's driven by a lack of planning and a clear strategy. The United States is running through munitions as well here at home. In some cases, we have only about a quarter of the interceptors we need. I've been in briefings, and it's still not clear what the end goal of the war in Iran is. Without a clear end goal, we're making real trade-offs about where our resources go. We've seen these trade-offs already showing up in Ukraine, where it continues to adapt and is currently advancing against Russian forces. But U.S. support has become less predictable, and allies are increasingly stepping in to purchase and backfill American-made arms. According to Ukrainian officials, over 80% of their strikes are now carried out by drones. The battlefield is moving toward autonomous systems and drone swarms. In fact, Senator Kaine and I just were in a hearing that was classified, but it's going to become open. But it was about how we are developing some of those developmental munitions, which are what we've been seeing in Ukraine and among our adversaries in Iran, from Russia, from China. But unfortunately, the support that we have in the U.S. is not keeping pace, and it doesn't stop with Ukraine. The broader security environment is becoming more dangerous. Russia is expanding and modernizing its nuclear capabilities. As we know, and the chairman alluded to, the New START treaty has been suspended. That ends inspections and provides increasing uncertainty. Russia has also deployed tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus, moving them closer to NATO and raising the risks. And we're hearing from a number of our NATO partners who are very concerned that within the next 5 years, Russia intends to advance on a NATO country. It's also testing new underwater nuclear systems that are harder to track and control. And at the same time, China is rapidly expanding its nuclear capabilities. It's constructing more than 300 new missile silos. It's growing its arsenal with little transparency and outside any arms control framework. And at the same time, the arms control framework that has helped manage these risks is breaking down. Talks on future arms control arrangements have stalled. There's broad agreement that a multilateral approach that includes Russia and China is best, but as we know, that's not viable right now, and China has consistently opposed joining such negotiations. In practice, that gives China an effective veto over progress that we can make with Russia and on other fronts. Waiting for perfect conditions while things are moving in the wrong direction is not a plan. Mr. DiNanno, the Bureau of Arms Control and International Security has gone through a major reorganization. That was supposed to bring clarity and focus. I hope we will hear this morning how you're approaching this and what is guiding your decisions. I look forward to hearing your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. Mr. DiNanno, the floor is yours.
Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify before you today. I'm honored to be the first undersecretary appointed to lead what is known as the new and expanded T family since the State Department was reorganized in July of 2025. The reorganization consolidated the department's international security functions, expanding the T family from 3 to 5 bureaus, and assigned 3 offices to our broad portfolio. I serve as the Senior Advisor to the President and Secretary of State for U.S. policies on nonproliferation, arms control, and international security. Our team works on critical national security matters, ranging from preventing the proliferations of weapons of mass destruction to countering terrorism and international narcotics trade to approving arms sales and security assistance to U.S. partners and allies worldwide. When I was before you as a nominee almost a year ago, I committed to seeking verifiable and enforceable arms control agreements that enhance America's national security. I have used each day of my first months as the Undersecretary to advance that very goal. Perhaps less publicly known than other State Department roles are the vast responsibilities that fall under the Office of the Undersecretary for Arms Control and International Security. We oversee nuclear, chemical, biological, and conventional weapons issues, export controls, sanctions enforcement, treaty verification. We drive interagency policy processes, coordinate closely with the War Department and other federal agencies, and represent the United States in bilateral and multilateral diplomatic settings, including the critical trilateral AUKUS arrangement. T-family personnel largely consist of civil service experts. Our staff possess deep knowledge, technical competencies that are relevant to a vast range of international security concerns. We leverage our in-house expertise of technologists, like seismologists, nuclear physicists, counter-drone experts, aviation experts, to fulfill an extensive array of T-family responsibilities. We also negotiate, implement, and rigorously verify an array of arms control, international arms control, and disarmament agreements on behalf of the Secretary of State and President Trump. One such treaty, at the top of many minds, is New START, which expired last month. The treaty was ineffective and only constrained the United States while allowing Russia to build and maintain a vast theater-ranged nuclear arsenal. New START was a bilateral treaty that had no impact on the nuclear weapons programs in China or any other states. New START no longer served the national interest of the United States, and its expiration opened up a new era for us to pursue President Trump's vision for an improved and modernized agreement. Although the work of our team may often be invisible to the public, our wide-ranging responsibilities are essential to keeping Americans safe at home and abroad. I'll share just a couple quick examples with you. In January, members of our Emerging Threats Bureau traveled to Antarctica to inspect foreign research stations and to verify the absence of any military activity associated with the Antarctic Treaty System. Our Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement operates a high-value rewards program that offers financial incentives and information bringing major criminals, corrupt officials, and transnational criminal networks to justice. The Counterterrorism Bureau supports Secretary Rubio's designations of foreign terrorist organizations, including terrorist actors and cartels like the Muslim Brotherhood and Tren de Agua. Since January, when President Trump took office, the Counterterrorism Bureau has designated nearly 30 foreign terrorist organizations, including 15 narco-terrorist cartels. Another significant T-family office is our Political Military Affairs Bureau that has recently cut regulations, streamlined approval processes, and the number of restricted government-to-government transfers by over a third as a part of the administration's priority to jumpstart the U.S. industrial base and remove outdated regulations. Since our AUKUS partnership, Similarly, our AUKUS partnership helps strengthen both U.S. security and prosperity by securing significant Australian investments to uplift our submarine industrial base in an important arrangement with the United Kingdom and Australia. We work day in and day out to make America safer, more prosperous, and more secure by modernizing arms control, countering adversaries, and protecting America's technological and military advantages. And we will continue to deliver measurable results to the American people. I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you so much. We certainly appreciate your expertise here and great background on this. I agree with virtually everything you said, with one exception, and that is that you said that the New START Treaty did not restrain any country on the planet. I would disagree with that. It restrained us. We were the only ones that kept our word under that agreement, and as we know, Russia was just totally loose under that. Let me ask this. Obviously, China's a big question mark here, and I don't think anybody would think that they're going to negotiate until they get peer status with us. Once they develop and produce enough nuclear material and arsenal, I think at that point they may be interested in talking. What's your view on that? Do you think when they get to peer status with us, they will indeed want to sit down and talk?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Chairman. I agree with you. The New START Treaty only constrained the United States. Regarding the Chinese, I think, first of all, it's important to point out it's their international obligation under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, Article 6, to engage in disarmament discussions, and they have refused to do that. So we continue to press them on that. Regarding the growth of their stockpile, as you said in your opening statement, we no longer view this as a bilateral problem. Even the New START number of 1,500 Russian strategic systems combined with what is approaching 1,000 warheads, that 2,500 is already an asymmetry between the New START limit that the United States would be at under 1,500. Their incentive to engage with us is, again, number one, it's their obligation, and number two, we have to work very closely with the War Department to understand that we're going to vigorously compete and modernize our deterrent to try to, again, roll back the Chinese stockpile.
Well, I appreciate that. I guess I look a little further down the road even than that, and that is that I don't lay awake at night worrying about Russia using a nuclear weapon, nor for that matter China. Both of them are matured societies far enough to know that it's world destruction when someone presses the button for the first time. What I worry about are the rogue countries that either have an ambition, or even non-state actors that have an ambition to get a nuclear weapon and use it. And of course, once one is used, who knows what that's going to set off. So let's assume for a minute the best, and that is that once China gets to the point where it feels that it can sit down and negotiate and reach a reasonable agreement, and Russia comes to the table and the three of us get to a point where we have an agreement we can live with, what do you think that the possibilities are, or the likelihood that the three of us together will then look to the other countries that have nuclear weapons and say, look, the three of us are going to help police the entire planet's arsenal of nuclear weapons? Do you think that's a reasonable possibility to look forward to in the future?
Thanks for the question. I think it's certainly a possibility. I mean, I think it's important today to point out that we do participate in the P5, which would be all the nuclear weapon states, UK, France, as well as China, Russia, and the United States. I think the P5 can be an effective tool. I think it needs to be more effective and take on some of the challenges that we've laid out. And also, I also think the point that you may raise about really nuclear potential proliferation risks continue. The Nuclear Suppliers Group, for example, was formulated in 1974. The Australia Group, MTCR, our existing non-proliferation regimes are antiquated. They need to be modernized. And I think we have to recognize that across all nuclear weapon states. I think this is also an issue we'll discuss at length at the NPT review conference next month. But these are all issues very much in my mind, and look forward to working through some of these issues with you.
I appreciate that, and I guess one of the reasons that I think is the just recent experience we had where war broke out between India and Pakistan. Both nuclear-armed countries. One of those, Pakistan, the nuclear weapons aren't even controlled by the government. They're controlled by the military. And that is an absolute recipe for disaster. So, something's got to be done about this. I mean, as I say, we look over the fence, we look at Russia, we look at China, but those aren't nearly as big a threat, I think, to the planet as are the rogue actors. Your thoughts?
Regarding India and Pakistan, look, there are a lot of issues. Our approach, as we laid out, as the president laid out, is broadly multilateral. Not it's an evolution from the trilateral approach of the prior Trump administration. And certainly, we would welcome discussions with both India and Pakistan. There are safety and reliability issues. There's lots for us to talk about, again, outside of the non-proliferation framework. So I think it's important we engage both countries, to your point, sir.
Well, I agree with that, and the president agrees with that. You noticed when that war broke out, both he and the secretary waded into that really, really quickly, and were instrumental in bringing that to an end very quickly. And they recognize the dangers that countries like this have that possess nuclear weapons, particularly if two of them get into it with each other. Senator Shaheen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I certainly agree with you that the threat, the more alarming threat, is probably from non-state actors and from countries that have not been part of a previous controlled regime around nuclear weapons. And I certainly agree with you, Mr. DiNanno, that we need a new way to think about it. But we had a hearing here in December where our witnesses, they had some disagreement, but I think there was general appreciation for the fact that if China is not willing to join discussions and Russia is, why would we not go ahead and start engaging with Russia? Because they have more nuclear weapons right now than China does. What we've heard from some sources is that China doesn't intend to engage in nuclear talks until it is on parity on nuclear weapons with the United States. So it seems to me that there would be some benefits as we're looking at upgrading the nuclear non-proliferation guidelines to going ahead and engaging with some of those countries that pose a concern for the United States. So how do you answer that?
So we've not put any limits on our approach, our multilateral approach. It doesn't shut off any bilateral engagements that might lead to this to a multilateral approach. And
are we engaging, however, in those? Because there's a difference between saying, yeah, if somebody wants to come and approach us, we're happy to engage, and are being proactive about how we engage with other countries.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Again, as I mentioned earlier, our engagement in the P5 is ongoing. Again, that's always a challenge, but I think it needs to, like some of our other regimes, needs additional attention and additional caregiving. And again, the Russians and the Chinese, as well as UK and France, are all involved in these discussions. So there that would be a multilateral venue. And again, we have not shut off any channel that would exist for a bilateral engagement. Again, I think it's important that we keep all our options open, and I think the president's policy has clearly done that.
Well, thank you. While I appreciate that the threat of nuclear weapons is a concern that has much greater ramifications, the reality we're seeing right now, whether it's in the war in Ukraine, in Iran, in other parts of the world where conflict is existing, is that warfare is changing and that the weapons are changing, and that the bigger threat right now may not be those nuclear weapons, it may be the other weapons that are being used. We really pushed our European allies to step up on their own defense and on Ukraine, and they have. Right now, they spend more than we do supporting Ukraine, and they're spending that money on American weapons. Are we in a position where we can actually deliver the weapons that they're buying from us?
Thanks for the question, Senator. I think it's an important one. And I think really shows why the reorganization of the State Department and putting all of the bureaus that do international security together makes sense. Because I think in relation to our political military bureau and the work that we're doing to modernize our defense industrial base, we have released 2 executive orders. We work very closely with the War Department. As part of the most recent executive order, had announced that it wanted an executive council to stand up between the Commerce Department, the State Department, and the War Department. And that council, that meeting took place within a month. That's unheard of bureaucratic speed, I can tell you. So the commitment,
that doesn't make me feel better.
Not a very high bar.
No.
The commitment to modernizing our defense industrial base couldn't be stronger. I heard it loud and clear during my confirmation process. The State Department role here is to make sure that our regulatory approach doesn't constrain our allies and partners, that the demand signal from every part of the government, from this committee, from my leadership, was to move faster and to provide more capability. I think our recent America First arms transfer strategy is a really good iteration on that for our partners and allies around the world, it might not always require our most exquisite platform, might not require an F-35, might not require a Patriot system, but there are other systems that are certainly good enough, that complement existing U.S. posture in the region, and that can send a demand signal to industry to stand up other capabilities. So again, the State Department piece of this is to open up the aperture, take on a little more risk, and move faster. That really is dwarfed by the reforms they're making in the War Department. And Under Secretary Duffy and his team are making drastic reforms. We work very closely with them. I'm on a call with them weekly, driving change, driving integration. So it is a priority for us. And again, I think it's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to be easy or painless. I think we need to work together, the administration and the Congress, there may be some legislative relief we may need along the way here, but it's absolute national security imperative, not only for the security of the United States, but as well as our partners and allies. And I think this is what you're seeing play out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, and Mr. DiNanno, thank you for being here. You know, we're in the middle, obviously, of this active conflict with Iran, and Iran has a record of global menace and nuclear proliferation that's well established. But it's worth discussing now, I think, how we'll monitor and evaluate Iran's nuclear, drone, and missile capabilities following the conclusion of the military campaign. The recent launch of an Iranian missile on Diego Garcia now puts European capitals within direct range of the regime's missiles. In addition, the DIA concluded even prior to Operation Epic Fury that Iran had developed space launch with vehicles that could use to develop a military viable ICBM by 2035 should Tehran decide to do so. So first question to you is, how are you engaging with our NATO allies to update their threat assessments and perceptions regarding Iran, the missile threat, and what arms control regimes are viable to constrain Iran's ability to threaten Europe?
Thanks for the question, Senator. The first question is, I just got back from Europe last week, extensive meetings with the British and the French. I've had multiple engagements with other NATO allies, the Germans, the Danish, the Dutch, the Polish, you name it. We are actively involved. I was telling the staff earlier, this is really the bulk of my time and my job is to engage foreign partners. Certainly NATO is a huge part to that. And we need to be, again, extremely clear our support to NATO. I think the president has been, and we need to continue to double down on that. The second part of your question, look, I've given this a lot of thought. I'm very troubled when I look across. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. Across our non-proliferation regimes are all antiquated. Nuclear Suppliers Group was formed in 1974. The MTCR, 1987. The Australia Group, which addresses chemical and biological threats, in 1985. I mean, this my entire adult life. So we're trying to shove 2026, 2030 next generation problem set into an old business model. So I really, I'm currently chairing a group inside the State Department on how to modernize, for example, the MTCR. I'm personally overseeing that because that's a regime where we have to be extremely concerned that we're not constraining our allies and partners more than we are the adversary. And I think there's hard questions to ask. So I look forward to working with you and your team on soliciting ideas. I don't want to predetermine the outcome of that engagement. There may very well be elements, and I'm sure there will be, that we need to maintain, but it absolutely needs to be modernized.
Rethinking, yeah. I agree with that. According to the Director of National Intelligence 2026 Annual Threat Assessment, Russia is developing anti-satellite nuclear weapons, which the intelligence community describes as the greatest single threat to the world's space architecture. So, Undersecretary, how should the United States respond to the expanding threat of outer space weapons, challenges by peer and near-peer adversaries, and which arms control approaches, along with risk reduction measures, offer the most promise given the expiration of the New START treaty?
Thanks for the question, Senator. Again, very important question. Specifically to the Russian outer space system, I don't want to come into too much detail here in an open forum, but what I can say is that any deployment of that system would be a violation of the Outer Space Treaty. So sort of, directly focused on sort of the arms control piece of it. The Russian exotic systems are getting crazy, even for the Russians. So I think this, the president's approach, again, in the ranking member's earlier question about other bilateral as well as other multilateral ways to get at the problem, the answer is yes. That's obviously a system that diplomatically we would aggressively pressure the Russians, and I'm sure it'll come up in our P5 engagement, which is imminent. Again, I don't want to talk too much more about the Russian capability in open forum, but certainly the exotic systems, the underwater system, the Poseidon, the Burevestnik, which is their nuclear-powered cruise missile, these are all systems that fall outside of New START, to your point, that we need to have a direct conversation with the Russians, and I'm sure we will.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'll yield my remaining 10 seconds.
We'll gladly accept that, Senator. Senator Keene.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for holding this hearing. Just for the audience, the Senate uses a lot of acronyms, so we'll talk about NATO and AUKUS and CDC. So T family, what is the T family at the State Department, and what does it stand for? The T does not mean anything. It's just historically been called the T family. The functions within it are very important functions, and I'm glad that the chair has called this hearing so that we can explore. Secretary DiNanno, you, in your opening comments, talked a little bit about a priority that's important to me and many on the committee, which is the AUKUS framework. This was a framework announced by President Biden. It's been worked on and supported in a bipartisan way by this committee. President Trump had a very productive meeting with the Australian PM last October about AUKUS, critical minerals, other issues. Came out of that meeting saying full steam ahead on AUKUS. The NDAA that we did in FY24 created the Office of AUKUS Senior Advisor in the State Department as a primary integrator of the partnership. The senior advisor is intended to streamline regulatory barriers to enable us to have this framework be all that it can be between the U.S., Australia, and the U.K. So how are you attempting to empower that senior advisor position to develop and cement the AUKUS partnership?
First, to your very important first point, I think T was for the first undersecretary's name was Tom. Okay. So, and if it's not, that's my name. So it's good for me.
That'll make it easy to
classified
remember.
information.
So, and there is a State Department historian that actually we work with, who's terrific, that I'm going to ask that question. Thanks for the AUKUS question. It's very important. So number one, the AUKUS coordinator reports directly to me. Number two, so I see him every day. He's extremely experienced. His team is small, but extremely knowledgeable on some of the details, the regulatory pieces that need to fall into place here. Another data point I think is important. Just yesterday, I met with the Australian coordinator, and last week I was in the UK meeting with the UK coordinator. And the UK coordinator sort of felt that, hey, you guys are really talking a lot about Australia. We have the UK piece here too as well. So it actually, we had extremely productive discussion about the type of capabilities, understanding the geography, of course, and their footprint in NATO offers a little different flavor than, say, the Australia team. So we've made some positive steps forward in AUKUS. I think, obviously, one is the MTCR. We moved we look at UAVs now, Tier 1 UAVs, as would be manned aircraft instead of MTCR controlled. So that's a good start. However, when you get into the actual agreement, some of the provisos that would be attached, I mean, it's like the old a fishing knot. The more you pull it apart, the more you figure out, the more problems there are. So that's going to happen here. Sort of looking at AUKUS as a bit of the canary in the coal mine on this regulatory reform, again, pulling apart the knot here, we'll take them one at a time. I mentioned earlier, again, we are going through an MTCR review. I don't want to predetermine the outcomes. I'm happy when that's done to come back and talk to you about it. But I believe we'll probably need some regulatory relief and legislative relief. So I'd like to work with you and the committee on this. The War Department has moved very smartly on this. We're anxiously awaiting some announcements on Pillar 2. And another point here is the excluded technology list, right, is the other sort of 800-pound gorilla here. It needs to be a lot smaller.
Well, I like the progress. I just went to Australia in February. We did 37 events in 4 cities in 7 days, 35 of which were AUKUS related, to really kick the tires to see what the Aussies are doing by way of investment. We had hard questions for them. They had hard questions for us. It was a really good dialogue. One of the areas, just to put 2 on your radar screen that continues to be important, is the implementation of the ITAR reforms. And you were right to point out in your answer that we got to get it right here, because we may want to do similar partnerships with other allies. And to the extent that we figure out how to do ITAR reform right for AUKUS, it will also make it easier to decide how to apply that
100%.
to other allies.
Concur.
And then on Pillar 2, everybody's talking about what's a marquee project, what's a signature project. It could be anything, but sometimes it makes it hard to focus. I'm excited to hear that there may be some announcements forthcoming that
We're getting closer.
Give it some focus. I appreciate that. I yield back. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
There's nothing to yield back, Senator. Thank you very much. Senator Cornyn, you occupy the far end of the dais there, but having said that, and that's the result of the idiosyncrasies of the Arcanian committee system here in the Senate, but I don't think there's anyone on this committee that's got a longer history of dealing with this subject of more seniority than you do. Appreciate hearing your thoughts on this.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. President, company accepted between you and the ranking member. Mr. Secretary, you certainly have an expansive portfolio. I don't know how you do it, but thank you for doing it. Senator Shaheen talked about the rapid rate which we're using various munitions and counter-drone technology, counter-missile technology in the Middle East and the conflict with Iran. I know we all are concerned about our defense industrial base, but it also takes money to buy these munitions and this materiel. The President is allegedly going to request $400 billion in emergency supplemental for the Department of War, presumably to replenish a lot of this. And can you talk a little bit about the necessity of those, whether it's a $200 billion or some other figure, whatever the figure is, necessity of Congress funding the effort to replenish these munitions and develop our industrial base where it should be?
Senator, thanks for the question. First of all, I do the job because I have hundreds of dedicated State Department's civil and Foreign Service officers that work for me. They're a really special group, and they work really hard. Specific to your question, the specific supplemental I probably can't speak to. I haven't been part of those discussions, but I think broader on modernizing the defense industrial base, that's some of the points I was making earlier. The foreign military sale reform has to be a priority. Uniquely, it has to be a partnership between the federal government, both the administration and the Congress, our allies and partners, as well as industry. So I think, again, this is a little bit outside of my purview at the State Department. The War Department has really leaned forward on this and are looking towards some extremely unique arrangements with industry on how to get give some certainty to their investments. So I would defer most of the questions on those, what those look like, what those private sector and government arrangements look like to bring more capabilities faster. Again, the State Department piece here is the regulatory piece. I don't want to downplay it because it's important and it can get in the way. Again, the demand signal that I've gotten, again, across, again, from the committee to my leadership is to open up the aperture and make more capabilities available. And again, the War Department and the administration are doing some extremely creative financing to bring more capabilities to our forces and to our partners and allies. I'm not sure that answers your question directly on the supplemental, but I don't want to get that wrong.
Thank you. I just want to make the point we're going to have to come up with the money to pay for it. Congress is, one way or the other. So the New START treaty, I agree with the comments that you and others have made that Russia cheats and thus but also the president's determination to somehow bring China into those negotiations and for any new arms control treaties in the future. What's it going to take to get China engaged, in your view?
It's a great question, sir. Thank you. So I think the president's broad view, and he's been extremely forward-leaning on this, is he wants to see fewer nuclear weapons in the world. And that's a good place to start. Again, the problem with New START, again, not to sort of repeat what we've already talked about a little bit, is it only covered part of the Russian stockpile and none of the Chinese stockpile. So I think there's two points to make here. Arms control and non-proliferation are one side of the coin. The other side of the coin, of course, is the War Department and a vigorous modernization effort, which is ongoing, that will bring new capabilities across the spectrum. I think 150 B-21s will get the Chinese attention. I think hundreds of LRSO will get their attention. Admiral Correll testified in front of the House Armed Services Committee, I think, last week and went through exactly what that modernization looks like. I don't think anyone wants an arms race. I know the president doesn't. He's been very clear. He wants to see fewer nuclear weapons. But if the Chinese continue this breakout, again, and they're approaching parity, again, this isn't a 2040 problem. It's very much becoming a 2030 problem that we will compete vigorously across the spectrum of modernizing our nuclear forces.
Thank you, Senator Cornyn.
Mr. Chairman, will you indulge one more question?
The chairman is most generous. Feel free.
So, Mr. Secretary, let me ask you about the enriched uranium in Iran. Where is it? How big a concern is it to you? And what's your opinion about Iran's determination to continue developing a capacity to develop a nuclear weapon.
Mr. Secretary, before you answer that question, is that answerable in the setting we're in?
I can lay out some thoughts on it.
He asked for a specific location, and
I wouldn't.
I've been in an intel briefing on this, and my
We should defer
sense
that.
is that there's,
I'll withdraw that part of the question.
okay, that'll make it easier. Thank you.
Certainly.
Look, I think the administration's Iran policy was clear, and it didn't start 3 weeks ago. President Trump issued NSPM 2 14 months ago, laid out a policy that Iran's nuclear program and their nuclear-capable missiles pose an existential threat to the United States, and that Iran can never be allowed to acquire or develop nuclear weapons. That was the U.S. policy 14 months ago. It maintains the U.S. policy today. Again, to the chairman's point on the uranium stockpiles, that active theater of operation will be with the War Department and Central Command would be sort of the folks to talk to directly about that. What we do at the State Department and inside the again the T family bureaus, we would support the IAEA. That engagement would resides under me, but any of that would probably be after the cessation of hostilities. But I don't want to get out in front of, again, what's happening in the region there. That's the purview of the War Department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Corden. Senator Merkley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Undersecretary DiNanno. And I appreciated our earlier discussion on a number of these questions. I wanted to ask primarily about the arrangements with Saudi Arabia. You mentioned in your testimony that 5 123 agreements have been struck. I believe that Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Hungary, South Korea, and Armenia. In your testimony, you say that you've negotiated 5 123 agreements. I'm assuming one of those is the Saudi Arabia agreement?
Yeah, so the Saudi Arabia agreement hasn't been signed by the president yet. As you know, once the president signs it, if he signs it, that would be due to Congress. And
Was that one of the 5 that you were referring to in your testimony, or you're talking about 5 different 123 agreements?
so the administration has laid out a goal of signing 20 123 agreements.
I know that. I don't want to take a lot of time on this. I'm just asking if Saudi Arabia is one of the 5 that you referred to in your testimony.
I believe so.
Okay. So if it hasn't been signed, so that probably answers my next question, which is the associated bilateral safeguards agreement probably has not been completed with Saudi Arabia as well?
Yeah, again, that once the agreement is signed, I'm happy to talk through those details, but until the president actually signs it,
So
it'd
my
be pre-decisional.
understanding has been, and I'm referring to your November 24th report to Congress, you note Saudi Arabia's reservations about the additional protocol. And the 3 things that normally comprise the gold standard are the additional protocol that allows inspection of all nuclear sites, including ones that we are not directly involved in, and also no reprocessing and no enrichment. Of those 3 things, do you think that any of those 3 might be included in the agreement with Saudi Arabia? No processing, no enrichment, and the inspection of all sites, including ones, civilian nuclear sites, including ones that are not directly our companies, if you will.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Senator. Look, again, once the agreement is actually signed, we can go through some of the details. Until it's signed, I don't want to go through the details, but what I can tell you is I think we will have a solid and compliant with the Atomic Energy Act non-proliferation approach. Again, if it gets signed by the president, whether it meets some of those data points, AP or gold standard, again, it's pre-decisional for us to talk about that. Once it's signed and delivered, I'm happy to come back and answer all those questions.
Okay, I'll just express my concerns, which I know you've already heard from me, but I'll express them again here. And that is, all the public reports are that none of those 3 things will be covered by the agreement with Saudi Arabia. And if they're not covered with Saudi Arabia, and so that they're able to reprocess or able to enrich, that we cannot inspect sites, IAEA cannot inspect, and we cannot inspect sites that are other nuclear sites, it seems to me the perfect setup for a potential proliferation. And also that once that standard is set, other nations find it very hard to agree to standards that Saudi Arabia hasn't agreed to. As you and I discussed, you have in the Islamic world a major Shiite superpower, Iran, you have a major Sunni superpower, Saudi Arabia, and anything that Saudi Arabia gets in terms of not covering enrichment, not covering reprocessing, not covering the additional civilian nuclear sites for inspections, makes it very hard for anyone else to ever agree to those. And so I know you're saying there'll be strong standards, but I guess count me concerned.
If I could just respond quickly. The Saudi Arabia is determined to develop a civilian nuclear program. I think the approach that we have in the non-proliferation requirements inside the Section 123 of the Atomic Energy Act, which we will meet, and I'm confident that we'll have a extremely defensible non-proliferation program. It's most important that that non-proliferation program is run by an American company and an American program as opposed to a Russian or Chinese program. Again, I understand exactly what you're referring to. Again, I'm happy to come back if we get the agreement signed and walk through some of those details. But I'm supremely confident that we will have a non-proliferation footprint. Again, should it get signed, that would more than meet the minimum standards in the Atomic Energy Act.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary DiNanno, good to see you. And I just want to underscore the concerns raised by Senator Merkley regarding reports that the administration is talking about going into a nuclear cooperation agreement with Saudi Arabia without the gold standard 123 standards. That, of course, is what we required of the UAE and other recent countries. And if we're really concerned about non-proliferation, it seems we should have the strongest standards. The chairman mentioned during his opening comments the Iranian nuclear enrichment program, and of course you have non-proliferation in your portfolio. You're familiar with DNI Tulsi Gabbard's recent testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee, right? Are you aware that the DNI testified just recently before the Senate Intelligence Committee? And in her testimony, she said, and I'm quoting, "As a result of Operation Midnight Hammer," of course that was the operation that took place last year, "as a result of the Operation Midnight Hammer, Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated," unquote. Do you contest that finding that was presented by the DNI?
Sir, I'm not in a position to revisit her testimony or the president's decision.
I'm asking you about right now a comment that the DNI made. Are you privy to? You have non-proliferation in your portfolio. I would think that you are following this issue closely. Are you?
I'm happy to talk about the role that the bureaus that I oversee play in non-proliferation in regards to Iran. But again,
well, do you agree with her statement? This was public testimony, and I'm quoting again. "There have been no efforts since then to try to rebuild their enrichment capability," unquote. Do you disagree with that statement from the DNI?
The intelligence community's job is to inform policymakers. I am a consumer of intelligence. I'm not a maker of intelligence in that sense. Okay.
Right. So, okay.
She provided, I believe, the intelligence community's view to the policymaker. President Trump is the policymaker.
I understand that.
Yeah.
That sort of goes without saying, but go ahead and say it. Joe Kent, who, as you know, resigned in protest, said that all 18 of America's intelligence agencies agreed that Iran had no capacity to develop a nuclear bomb, unquote. As you say, you're a consumer of intelligence. Have you seen anything to dispute that statement?
I don't want to respond to what one individual. I mean, I haven't seen.
I'm asking you about the intelligence community's assessment which DNI Gabbard testified publicly about.
Yes, sir. I'm responding to your comment about the individual that you mentioned. I haven't seen his comments. I don't follow his comments.
Well, you don't want to. You didn't want to respond to my question about DNI Gabbard either. I asked this because President Trump said on March 4th, quote, if we didn't hit them within 2 weeks, they would have a nuclear weapon, unquote, which is manifestly untrue based on all the testimony we've seen from the intelligence community. Let me turn to another issue. You're responsible for ensuring that U.S. arms transfers are consistent with the Trump administration's conventional arms transfer policy, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And that policy requires that you consider the risk that a proposed arms transfer may contribute to violations of international humanitarian law, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Were you involved in assessing that risk in connection with the administration's recent decision to invoke emergency powers to bypass congressional review and transfer over 20,000 bombs to the Netanyahu government?
In response to the administration's emergency declaration, if there's ever a circumstance that's an emergency, this would be it.
Mr. DiNanno,
let me
this
just,
is
if I could just,
non-responsive.
no,
I
sir.
didn't ask you whether it was an
I'd like to,
emergency. I asked you whether you
I'll
complied
finish my
with
answer.
the CAT policy
If you let
requirements.
me finish, I'm happy to answer your question, sir. That being said, I sat before the committee during my confirmation process and committed to working with the committee to follow the law. The law does allow for the emergency exemption. That's why we used it.
I'm not asking you about the
I understand that, but I think the
exemption.
context is important, sir.
I know because I submitted a question for the record, and you said you would comply with the CAT policy. So now I'm asking you whether you were involved in reviewing the transfer of 20,000 bombs to the Netanyahu government with respect to compliance with the CAT policy.
Any foreign military sale that we do would fall underneath the conventional arms transfer
Did you
policy.
personally review that assessment?
Again, Senator, the emergency declaration.
No, not the emergency declaration. Did you review the assessment regarding whether or not that transfer of 20,000 bombs complied with the CAT policy?
Everything that we do complies with the law.
Did you personally, or were you personally involved in that review?
I was involved with the transfer, and anything that we would do would be consistent with our CAT policy, which is compliant with the law.
So I'm going to take it as a no that you did not personally review whether or not that transfer complied with CAT policy. Did you personally review that?
You can take it any way you want.
Well, did you?
I've already told you I was involved with the policy. I oversee the Political Military Bureau.
Okay. Did you personally review?
I review hundreds of arms sales. I signed hundreds of them. The emergency declaration, again, it was consistent with the law. And most importantly, I think it's important for the committee that we lay out, we're not trying to establish a new norm that will continue to address, on a case-by-case basis, look at emergencies if they exist, just like the Biden administration did in 2023.
I'll finish.
Use the same
I'm not
authority.
asking
No, sir. Let me finish my comment. I think
But
it's
I'm
important.
not asking you about the
I know, but
emergency
I'm
authority.
trying to address your concern.
No, you're actually.
Yes, sir, I am.
Are you concerned that Israeli Defense Minister Katz said with respect to Lebanon that they were going to use the, quote, Rafah model in Gaza? Does that concern you?
I'm not familiar with that comment.
Right, it's a matter of public record. Could you take a look at it and get back
I would
to me?
happily look
Let me
at
know if that concerns you.
Yes, sir, I'm happy to look at it.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. All right. So last week, NVIDIA said that it had been licensed for many customers in China for its advanced AI chips, the H200, and had received purchase orders from many companies, in quotes. On January 13th, the Department of Commerce rule governing the H200 license process, which the State Department plays a role in as a reviewing agency, contains various end-use certification requirements. For instance, the exporter must certify the chips will not be used for military, intelligence, or weapons of mass destruction. However, given Beijing's military-civil fusion, that seems difficult, if not impossible, to certify. Currently, Communist China is so compute-constrained that it continues to resort to smuggling U.S. AI chips and distilling from U.S. models just to remain competitive. As evidence of this, on Thursday, the Justice Department charged 3 people diverting $2.5 billion worth of servers with NVIDIA AI chips to Communist China. Undersecretary DiNanno, is it your understanding that Communist China is pursuing a civil-military fusion strategy whereby it has eliminated any barriers between its commercial and defense sectors to develop the most technologically advanced military in the world?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. The State Department role and the bureaus that I oversee, specifically in regards to export control enforcement, we had direction from the President to support this chip sale to China, with the caveat, and an important caveat, that we would only do so by establishing, I'm trying to remember the President's exact phrasing of it, strong national security. And that is exactly what the Non-Proliferation Bureau that reports to me does. We review, I can't talk about specific licenses per se, but we have reviewed and continue to review and to apply the highest standards to look at all the intelligence and all the derogatory information that we may find and push that into the decision process. Okay. Ultimately, I'm sorry, sir.
Well, I was going to say, so, because I'm talking about the China civil-military fusion. You've heard of that term before, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so, I hadn't asked you about a specific license yet, so let's talk about it at a high level. How would you be able to certify that a technology that may have dual use, like, I don't know, say a high-end AI chip, would be able to be used for only one purpose versus going into some of the other things that, again, the license has to prescribe, so it can't go into weapons of mass destruction or intelligence or something like that? How can you possibly certify that if they've got this military civil fusion?
Yeah, so the review process is extensive. It is informed by the best intelligence that we have available from the intelligence community, and all of that, any derogatory information would go into sort of our decision process, whether or not we would recommend approval or not. Ultimately, your concern is noted, and I think it's important. But looking at each individual entity with an extremely high bar, again, the bar that the President himself set, and that's the bar that we implement, that I oversee and implement, is that high national security standard, and part of that would be to address the diversion risk.
Okay. So the ability to design and produce advanced AI chip lies at the heart of our technology competition with Communist China. Currently, Communist China cannot manufacture these chips without U.S. and allied semiconductor manufacturing equipment, or SME. As a result, export controls on SME represent one of our most significant points of leverage with Beijing. At present, U.S. companies are barred from selling certain SME to Communist China. For the past several years, we have prioritized diplomacy with allies to convince them to match our same level of controls. However, our allies' controls are still not as stringent as foreign companies, and foreign companies are able to continue filling orders for critical tools to Communist China, providing the support. This misalignment uplifts Chinese ship-making capabilities, helps Communist China maintain existing advanced allied tools, and shifts markets away from American firms. And given the AI is a dual use, it contributes to the enhanced capabilities for the PLA, posing serious national security threat. Do you agree that ensuring our allies have fully aligned our export controls on SME to ours is critical for national security?
Senator, thanks for the question. We have extremely active diplomacy with our allies. We have programs, not only sort of information sharing and engagement. The Non-Proliferation Bureau, which I oversee, actively seeks out and trains. We have, in attempting to raise the standards of potential weak spots or potential partners that we felt that we need to raise their standards. So not only do we actively engage with our, again, well, I would characterize as traditional allies, but it's very important that we raise the standards across the board, that across the countries that might be involved in that supply chain. And we have active programming that does that.
Well, this issue is why I plan to introduce the Multilateral Alignment of Technology Controls on Hardware, or MATCH Act, to harmonize export controls on SMEs to Communist China with our allies. The MATCH Act will ensure that if an adversary cannot build a tool themselves and not be able to buy it from the U.S. or our partners, I hope that my colleagues will join me in this effort so that the United States and not Communist China can lead the world in AI. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Ricketts. I know you've been very active in this area, and it is of absolutely critical concern. Not only what we sell to them, but also with what our allies, such as those the Netherlands, sells to them. That's absolutely critical too. So, thank you for your work in that regard. With that, Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, for today's hearing, and thank you, Mr. DiNanno, for joining us today. I want to go and talk about Nevada a little bit, because the Nevada National Security Site, the NNSS, was ground zero for the vast majority of the United States explosive nuclear testing from 1951 to 1992, during which there were 100 atmospheric tests and 828 underground tests conducted. Many Nevadans and downwind communities suffered from these exposures. They're still waiting for justice and compensation. Today, the NNSS plays a critical role in certifying the reliability, safety, and effectiveness of our nuclear stockpile, but without, I'm going to emphasize that, I could say it 100 times, without the need for explosive testing. So you can imagine my surprise when President Trump and others, such as Assistant Secretary Yaw, suggested that the U.S. should resume explosive nuclear testing. So, Mr. DiNanno, what is the State Department's position on explosive nuclear testing? And if President Trump were to order a nuclear test, how do you expect Russia or China to respond? What about other countries with nuclear weapons? And how would we manage the inevitable damage that this is going to cause to your efforts to pursue multilateral arms control and risk reduction measures?
Sorry. Thank you, Senator. Let me start by saying the President has laid out a view that I elaborated on and Assistant Secretary Yaw elaborated upon, where the President instructed the War Department and the Energy Department to test on an equal basis to that with our adversaries. The backdrop of that is important to understand, that both the Russians and the Chinese are testing at yield.
And I can tell you that in our U-1A tunnel and the radiographic things that we have there and the new kinds of technology we have adequately, without explosive testing, ensured the capabilities of our nuclear stockpile.
Thank you, Senator. Look, a couple points to make. Number one, we're still assessing. We've made no decision specifically on how or what any testing program would look like. So that's pre-decisional. If the administration comes to that decision, I'm sure would happy to come back and talk to you.
You better come back and talk to me, because the people of Nevada and the people of Utah and the people all around, do you think what happens in Nevada with an explosive test stays in Nevada?
Yes, ma'am.
Because it sure doesn't.
I think you're referring to any potential atmospheric testing.
I'm just telling you, they cratered the ground in Nevada,
Ma'am,
and let me tell you,
yes,
there's
ma'am.
groundwater. It doesn't go away.
Let me answer your concern if I could. I have not been in any discussions that have where open atmospheric testing has been under consideration. The testing, any testing is under consideration. Again, it is currently pre-decisional, but the president has laid out, and I think it's important to understand that the United States
Well, it's
is
important to
at-
understand that he better come talk to us in Nevada if he's planning to do that.
Yes, ma'am.
Because the people of Nevada have a stake in that. The people of
I
Utah have a stake in that. And I will look, everybody, Idaho, right above us, Texas, the wind, everything goes around this country, trust me.
I understand that, ma'am, and I appreciate your concern.
I'll move on to something else.
Well,
I wanna-
hold on, I want to address that. I think it's important. You're talking about the wind, that there is no discussion that I've been a part of that any atmospheric testing would take place. Again, the Chinese and Russian programs are underground. They are at yields that I can't talk too much about in this open hearing, but for example, the Chinese underground testing program would be in the hundreds of tons. No discussions that, again, I've been part of would in any way talk about winds or downrange. That is, I've heard nothing to that effect.
Well, you would understand my.
Of course I would.
My concern.
Yes, ma'am.
About the need for a visual besides a
course.
ground cratering in. And we have made millions of billions of dollars of investments in radiographic and other technology using math, using physics, using science to be sure that we ensure the integrity of our nuclear arsenal. We have been very specific in that, and I'm glad to take you down there if you haven't been to see what they're doing and how they're doing it before you enter into more of these discussions.
Yes, ma'am. I'd happily go there. I know what they do there. And again, I think it's extremely important to understand that the Russian and Chinese systems, the Russians and Chinese are testing at yield. That creates an intolerable disadvantage for the United States by not testing. And again, I've heard no discussion of any sort of atmospheric testing whatsoever.
Well, I tend to disagree with you, but I yield. Thank you.
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I find it troubling that the United Kingdom is prepared to transfer the Chagos archipelago to Mauritius, a deal that is straightforwardly dangerous to U.S. interests. Mauritius is closely aligned to Beijing, and the transfer gives China leverage over one of our most strategic military assets, significantly impacting our ability to operate from Diego Garcia. I have argued that giving the Chagos archipelago to Mauritius is in direct violation of the United Kingdom's treaty commitments to the United States, where the United Kingdom agreed to keep the base under British control and out of foreign control. President Trump has been pressing back very hard against this deal for months. Yet there are serious concerns that elements within the State Department continue to support it, even as Iran targets Diego Garcia with ballistic missiles. Public reporting indicates that support for this agreement originated within the Political Military Affairs Bureau, and that State doubled down in a February statement announcing a PM delegation to Mauritius. So let me ask you directly, do you support the Chagos Island deal between the United Kingdom and Mauritius?
Thanks for the question, Senator. I think the President's been pretty clear that, and obviously I follow the President's policy lead, specific to Diego Garcia. The most important thing that we have to have, and I agree with your assessment on the potential concerns with the Chinese as well, but the preservation of Diego Garcia as a forward operating base for the U.S. military, again, slightly outside of my purview, is without question the priority of the administration and of the State Department.
So I agree with you that the President has been quite clear, but I'd like to get you explicitly on the record with a yes or no answer. Do you support the Chagos Island deal between the United Kingdom and Mauritius?
Again, I'm unclear the current state of the negotiation between the United Kingdom and Mauritius. Again, what I support is that the United States have the ability to use Diego Garcia. And again, I don't, your reference to elements inside the State Department, I don't know where those elements are. The Political Military Bureau answers to me. I answered to Secretary Rubio, of course, to the President, so we would be completely aligned with the President and the Secretary's guidance on that.
Well, let me help you out because there appears to be some real tension. On February 18th, President Trump issued the following Truth Social. I have been telling Prime Minister Keir Starmer of the United Kingdom that leases are no good when it comes to countries and that he is making a big mistake by entering a 100-year lease with whoever it is that is claiming right, title, and interest to Diego Garcia, strategically located in the Indian Ocean. Our relationship with the United Kingdom is strong and a powerful one, and it has been for many years, but Prime Minister Starmer is losing control of this important island by claims of entities never known of before. In our opinion, they are fictitious in nature. And just to resolve any ambiguity, the Truth Social ends with, in all caps, "Do not give away Diego Garcia!" exclamation mark. Is there any ambiguity in what the President said on February 18th?
No, sir, there's not.
Okay, so then why did the PM Bureau announce a delegation to Mauritius and signal its support for the deal? And the official statement says, and I quote, "The U.S. supports the decision of the U.K. to proceed with its agreement with Mauritius concerning the Chagos archipelago." How do you reconcile that statement from state with the President's statement on the same topic?
Well, I don't think any delegation actually went, most importantly, because the President sets the policy, and we implement the President's policy.
Well, I would ask you to figure out who the hell wrote that statement that the U.S. supports this deal and why they are putting out statements from the Department of State that are directly contrary to the position of the President of the United States, who is charged with the responsibility of making that decision.
Yeah, and just one other statement, I think I would agree certainly that the UK would be the partner of choice there. There's no daylight between me or anybody at the State Department and the President.
Well, I am very glad to hear it because, as we have seen with the recent targeting of Diego Garcia by Iran, this base is critically important for protecting American national security interest. And if the United Kingdom is to compromise that base, that would, A, harm our national security interest, and B, be in direct violation of a binding treaty between the United States and the United Kingdom.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. I suspect, I could be wrong, but I suspect that the White House has already figured out who authorized that text that went out.
And
I'd be interested in hearing.
And if they haven't, I hope this questioning will accelerate that process.
I expect that will help. So thank you so much for appearing here today. I think this was an incredibly important hearing, and appreciate a good airing of these issues. Obviously, it's ongoing, and it's going to be something that's going to be around for a long time, and we look forward to working with you as we go forward on all of these. So thanks much. For the information of the members of the committee, the record will remain open until the close of business tomorrow, March 25th. And if we get any of the questions, I'd ask you to respond to them as quickly as possible. Again, with the thanks of the committee, we appreciate it. This committee is adjourned.